Welcome to the Macro Mob. My name is Sean. My co-host is Damien. And if you didn't know, now you know we are completely unqualified and uninterested in providing you with financial, social, legal, or life advice. Today, we're actually going to be talking about sunflower oil and the importance of it because it is a major component for certain sectors of the world that they exclusively use for cooking. So Dame's going to go ahead and get us started here.
Yeah, so thought we'd talk about a different kind of oil that you might not be thinking about in the news, but it's no less important. So one of the biggest exports and imports around the world is cooking oil. The United States is the biggest importer, followed by China, India, Japan, and then sort of varies. And it really, the biggest importers are the ones who fry the most food. But sunflower oil is something you might not think a lot about. Um, Sunflower oil or sunflowers and safflower, which is a similar type of plant, are grown in Russia and Ukraine. And Ukraine is by far the biggest exporter of it. And I'll show you that in a minute. What's interesting is just like in our last conversation about wheat and grain, sunflower oil exports primarily go to India, Egypt, the Middle East. And the reason that is that it's not often used for frying. It's a flavorless oil, so it can be used in a lot of traditional foods. It can be used as a preservative. It can be used in cosmetic applications. And for people who know, India and Egypt make a lot of different cosmetics and perfumes and things of that nature. It's also not easy to substitute it. There are other oils, like peanut oil would probably be the best substitute, but there are people who have allergies to peanut items. And also some of the other things that you would substitute it with are not tasteless completely. Sunflower oil is also often halal, which means it meets strict Islamic dietary standards. So that's why it's also more popular in that part of the world. Well, the reason I've got an article up about palm oil, even though I'm talking about sunflowers, is that it's important to understand that there was a shortage in palm oil in January of 2021. And the reason that's important is that palm oil comes out of Malaysia primarily. It's often used in similar ways to sunflower oil. It's often used in cosmetics. And so many of these countries were already running around in January and February trying to find substitutes for palm oil. And they were doubling down on sunflower oil. And so now they're in a bit of trouble because of this. And what China did is China made a big soybean oil buy in order to try and avoid being hurt by this. But you were having a cooking oil / palm oil supply constraint because Malaysia and Indonesia were having production problems. And those two alone account for 85% of the world's palm oil supply. I think Brazil also produces some. Okay.
Which two countries are
Malaysia and Indonesia?
85% of the world's palm oil supply.
Together, yeah. And now when I was in Vietnam and Cambodia, they have some small amounts, but nothing that could compete. So you've got a major cooking oil product where there's not an easy substitute for it because of the amount that is put into the market. These are the countries that export sunflower seed oil. And you can look at it by country. Ukraine is in this blue. And you can see that since 2015, it's been leading the world in production in terms of export worldwide. Nobody's even close. Russia's close. So if you take out the top two, you can see that you basically cannot replace it with the providers that are left. Moldova, interestingly, and France, no, Moldova and the Netherlands, I'm sorry, are two of the other exporting countries. But again, they can't keep up with that. Let's see what else can I show you.
Yeah, so there's basically no replacement in the market. I mean, that would take years. People would have to change all their crops as it is. So just without Russia and Ukraine, the whole sunflower market is gone.
Yeah. Here is I think I've also got a major. So this is the production. This is the production in metric tons. So you can see it a little more clearly. Again, Ukraine, Russia, the whole European Union together. Those are the biggest producing countries. And let's go back here.
Yeah, they're not even close.
Yeah. This is interesting. Egypt is getting a huge amount of soybean oil from the U.S. But the thing about this article that was interesting is this is a forecast of Egypt's growing consumption of these oils. So they're expecting it to go up. Just, each year it's going up about 2.5%. Palm oil imports, which they were getting, was 3.27. These are metric tons, and sunflower imports were 1.4, followed by soybean. So you can see how Egypt would be affected by first a palm oil shortage and then a sunflower shortage. I mean, that is a massive part of the oils that they import. India, I was trying to find this. Give me a second here. I've got a good article on India too, I think. The total sunflower trade is $4.41 billion. Belgium here is listed as a top importer of sunflower oil and safflower oil. And the reason is they refine it, not so much that Belgium eats all of that. Okay. So it's also important for tariffs. And I'm sorry, I had an article here on India, and I might have lost it. But one of the countries that's really affected by this change is India. So sunflower prices in India may go up another 5 to 10%, but edible oil, in year on year, the prices have gone up 70%.
It's crazy.
Now, so one of the things here is India consumes a ton of sunflower oil. There's actually a statistic that showed that 15% of India's imports, it's imports, that includes cars, computers, any other product, 15% is sunflower oil and sunflower related products. So that is a massive loss that they're going to have to figure out. It tells you how much it's used in food, how much it's used in their products. One of the things India has and has been using as a bargaining tool is India grows a lot of mustard crop, and that mustard crop is used in all sorts of foods. So it's trading mustard crop in exchange for sunflower oil. These oil prices have been going up for a year. Again, I've said it's about 70%. So sunflower oil accounts for 2 million tons, or 50% of its total imports. That number is just insane to me. Um,
Wait.
so
15% of their total imports of anything they
of
import, or
everything, yeah, of
wow.
everything. Um, so one of the things again here, I've been trying to say it's inelastic. It's not something that's easy to substitute. Safflower oil, as I said, is often used as a substitute, but safflower oil is very little of it's grown around the world. So you just can't switch. The other thing about safflowers is they grow in the exact same places as sunflowers. So if you're expecting to just switch over to safflower, well, you also have to wait for a boat to come from Ukraine. Um, I believe I've got a tab on. These are just show you a little thing on safflower exports. Um, Again, Russia, Turkey, Ukraine, Hungary, and France. So just like we were talking about with grain, if Europe is involved in a conflict, this very important oil that sometimes I think in the U.S. we may not think about a lot because we use a lot of corn oil, canola oil. I think canola oil and rapeseed oil are the same thing, but we use a lot of animal fat as well. Sunflower oil, I think, here is more expensive. Another oil-related thing is most people probably have noticed in the last year news about avocados. There being a shortage and them becoming very expensive. There's been there was an incident where apparently criminal gangs threatened U.S. agriculture officials near the border, threatened to hurt them if they didn't allow them to smuggle in avocados. Well, avocados are also used in oil, so that's another food oil that's so important in terms of making other products. It's also one that you maybe don't cook or heat up as much as you would olive oil or corn oil. But these things are just disappearing from the market. And how do you switch if millions upon millions of people are used to using sunflower oil to make the basic meals that they eat? How do they adjust? How do you make whatever you make, hummuses or other spreads or preservatives? People who don't eat dairy, which is a large part of the world, rely on those oils. So this conflict is following up upon already high prices, already low production in food oils, already COVID-related trade problems, to add additional pressure on food supplies for people.
Yeah, this, you know what, this makes more sense with about how India is kind of treading carefully regarding the current conflict, because they are so dependent on Russia. They can't afford to really choose a side if they're worried about protests and things happening at home. So that makes a lot of sense. They have to tread carefully, and you're not going to have that quick transition to be able to switch to a substitute or find another market for something. Let's say if you were going to go try to transfer over to canola oil or something, if their production is limited based on past years and years and years, it's going to be very difficult for them to just ramp up production. They're going to have to get employees, get new tools. I mean, everything right now, all materials are in a crunch. So I'm not sure what they're going to do.
Yeah, I think, a tough thing too is culturally. I think Americans, we take things for granted because we can eat something fried in anything, right? We probably don't really know a difference between something being cooked in vegetable oil as alternative to peanut oil. But when you start competing for those products, or if they're not things that you usually eat, when you're looking for substitutes, they have to meet those same conditions, right? So, and if they're not in high supply, corn is not grown in that area of the world and not eaten in the same way. Um, Grapeseed oil, there's not a huge amount of that produced. Flaxseed oil is expensive. Coconut oil is expensive. Olive oil has a low smoke point, so you can't cook with it in the same way you would and use it in certain applications. So that's the thing. It's disappearing from people's table, and that's when food shortages really affect you. It doesn't affect you so much when you can buy a different product that you might not like as much. But when there's something essential that forms a basis of your traditional foods or what you eat all the time, and that's gone, you have to make significant changes. And I think it's psychological as well. But I just wanted to share that. I don't think we think about sunflower oil or sunflowers very much, except in terms of baseball and people spitting out seeds or something. But this is just another global impact. And it also tells you how fertile that area of Ukraine is, that it can produce so much of the world's grain and seeds and fertilizer and natural gas and oil and who knows what else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just to keep going on this idea about oil, I actually found a few interesting articles just about kind of what's going on with fuel and how that's affecting people in other countries. And I would say people aren't very happy. So I just kind of wanted to share a few articles with our audience just to show them what's going on. Just give me one moment. I got them right here for y'all. Of course, all the links will be below. We're going global here. I'll get this on other channels. So this first one I just wanted to share is what's going on in Spain. So Spanish truckers continue to strike after rejecting new government aid package. Now, this is a package dealing with fuel prices. It tells you about how the increase has gone up right here. They rejected the proposal and began blocking Madrid's Central La Castellana Avenue. Yeah, so they're upset. You can see they're protesting here. Those fuel hikes, it's not easy for them to deal with. And I wanted to see if, when I saw this article, I was like, oh, I wonder what else is going on, in other countries that we're not hearing about. Look what I found. It's going on in the Philippines too. So in the Philippines, these jeepney drivers, they're all striking over the fuel prices. So these men and women who drive these vehicles, basically kind of like their taxis, I'm assuming. I don't know very much about the Philippines. I'm trying to learn. But it says right here, the Jeepney Drivers and Operators Union that is spearheading the strike said soaring fuel prices were a national calamity. The group has called for a nationwide transport strike in all major cities. I also found in here that it says up to half of them have already begun looking for other work just because it's become it's just not viable for them to be able to do their jobs with this surge in global oil prices. I also saw currently in the Philippines right now, the government is trying to get approved price hikes for 33 consumer staples, just grocery items. And I'll make sure to link that. I don't have that tab here, but I'll link that below in case anybody's interested or curious and kind of wants to see what's going on with the Philippines. And I just wanted to share one more article to show that these things are happening in some other places as well. So it's also happening in Sri Lanka. So Sri Lanka, this is by the Times of India, Sri Lanka deploys troops as fuel shortage sparks protests. Sri Lanka ordered troops to petrol stations Tuesday as sporadic protests erupted among the thousands of motorists queuing up daily for scarce fuel. So thousands of people, look at this, thousands of people are lining up for fuel, and the price is still going up right now. This is the the lifeblood for anybody. So, I just kind of wanted to share those things. We have these little subtle things and very important things that are going around the world going on with cooking oils, and everybody can see what's going on in their home countries with the price of fuel, but people in other countries more underdeveloped who don't have as many means are definitely getting hurt. So I just really wanted to share that.
I,
Go ahead,
I
Dan.
found something similar. So it's beyond just there. There have been protests in Russia, um, as well as this. I think it was last week. There were protests in the UK and in Germany by gig workers. These are primarily people who work for the equivalents of DoorDash. They're one of the biggest platforms there is called Just Eat, or maybe it's Just Eat, and there's something called Deliveroo. And these gig workers have been basically complaining because they feel the pinch. They get paid a certain rate that has actually been cut recently by Just Eats and these other companies, and so they're super sensitive to gas prices. So they're trying to demand higher wages from these companies, as well as demanding that the governments do something about the gas prices, either to supplement them or to give them some sort of break. Uber is just online, just because it's kind of related. Uber is also doing something about this. Uber is charging their passengers an extra fee. I think about another 45 cents or 55 cents per trip, and I think that's also going to start in the U.S. and they're going to try that around to try and help their drivers offset this increased cost. So, yep, and I think I said Russian. There's a Russian fuel strike as well. I don't have an updated article on that, but I believe there's something in the French newspapers this week about that. So everybody's starting to come out. I think the Canadian protests that were about trucking, but it was also about fuel, it was about a lot of things, maybe had an impact on getting people out in the street.
Yeah, and we'll definitely keep people updated as we get some more information, and we'll probably do a little short segment and kind of find out what's going on with gig workers, because I haven't really heard anybody talk about them in a long time. So maybe we can kind of check in and see how that transition or how that works going for people. Just see how they're maintaining and what companies are doing. We'll give people a little update on that. I think that'd be good. So that'll work out. Other than that, Dame, did you have anything to say? I think this was a pretty good episode. I think it was educational. Did you have anything you want to leave people with?
No, just again, we've talked about it a couple of times, but this is a time where some of your neighbors and people in your community may be facing some food insecurity. And if you have the ability, if you have the time, maybe you can't donate money, but maybe you can donate some food or your time to help feed those in your local community, whether it's through a religious organization or something local. Just check out your local resources and ask them how you can help, because this is something you may not notice it. It may be a small inconvenience for you, but there are other people who are feeling it very, very desperately, and we want to make sure we look out for them.
Absolutely. And we'll catch y'all in the next video. Take care.